part of it. I've read a quote a couple times from, I don't know if it was probably German generals. It was commenting that in order to combat the enemy, you need to know how they fought, but American troops just kind of winged it in some ways, which is not quite the right way to put it, but basically it's like America with our non-commissioned officers, we kind of delegate some decision making down. And there are entire cultures in countries, and there are cultures in businesses where you can't make a decision. Remember back in the Dilbert days, there was this term that had come out, and it was empowerment. And they wanted employees to feel empowered. And it's like, what does that mean? Because the moment you do something that somebody doesn't like, who's above you, well, then you get in trouble. So you get this reflexive response of, hey, I'm not going to do that. But wisdom, especially if it's godly wisdom gives us guidance in our life and our decisions, whether it's at work or in battle. And so wisdom is a big deal. You need to have wisdom, and it does make more than 10 mighty men. Of course, we're not talking about 10, we're talking about like David's mighty men. Those guys were monsters, and not monsters in a bad way, but they were just, I would almost say inhuman, or as far as they were such great warriors. The one that battled all the way into the city to get the water for David. I mean, and then he battled his way back. And then David didn't drink it. How ungrateful. He didn't drink it because he was like, well, I don't want to be above my men, right? That's the kind of leader you want, the leader who doesn't go, well, I'm the leader, so I get all these special privileges, which is really what happens with most quote unquote leaders or managers or generals or whatever. Verse 20 says, for there is not a just man upon earth that doeth good and sinneth not. So this is a continuation because it says for. And this is an all have sinned and come short of the glory of God statement from like Romans 3:23. This is, there's not a just man upon earth. Period. So this is a statement this is a true statement. This is not some philosophy or whatever. And so really what I think, what these chapters are doing and what Ecclesiastes does is I think it's a little bit of an amalgamation between, yes, Solomon tried different things, and then he talks about the different things and explains how they don't work. You can't do it outside of God. Verse 21 says, also, take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse against thee. For oftentimes also thine own heart knoweth that thou thyself likewise hast cursed others. This is something people like me need to do better at. And why do I say stuff like that? Because I fall down so much on showing mercy to people and being gentle. And, hopefully you're better at that and you're kinder. You can get better at it and God can help you with it. But it reminds me of the, parable about the servant who got his debts forgiven. And then he goes, his master forgave his debts, and then he goes to somebody that owes him money, and he, tries to, get water out of a rock, essentially, and shows him no mercy and puts him in prison, like debtor's prison. And which, by the way, we should be really thankful. I mean, debt's a bad thing, but you want to see how it's really bad, go to some other countries. Like, I know India has some stuff and where like the debts don't, like they pass on, and it really is a negative thing. And so the lack of responsibility is a frustration sometimes, but the fact that we're not burdened and thrown in prison just because we have a debt is a blessing from the Western civilization, which is essentially Christendom, which is spawned by God. So let's go to 2 Samuel 16, verse 5. And I found this to be really interesting, and an incredibly mature response from a king. David had pride, but he had wisdom. And sometimes he got a little crankier than other times, but he showed a lot of pride or wisdom. And so he was being, is this 2 Samuel? Yeah, 16. Okay, so this is, in my Bible, it says Shimei curses David. So Shimei is the guy here. He's the guy that we're talking about. It says the servant cursing. And when King David came to Bahurim, behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed still as he came. And he cast stones at David and at all the servants of King David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. So, I mean, he was kind of surrounded. This is a pretty brazen attack. And thus said Shimei, continuing in verse 7, when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, and in whose stead thou hast reigned. And the Lord hath delivered the kingdom unto the hand of Absalom thy son. And behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. Then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. I don't know. I shouldn't laugh, but I can just picture the guy saying that to David. Like, I'm going to kick his behind. And by all rights, that would have been fine in most cases, or at least by our standards. Like, this is a king. This guy's throwing rocks at you. Hey, that's assault with a deadly weapon right there, you know. But you're cursing at him. He's the king. That's very brazen. So he asked permission to go take the guy's head off. In verse 10 it says, and the king said, what have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord hath said unto him, curse David. Who shall then say, wherefore hast thou done so? And David said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, my son, which come forth out of my bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now may this Benjamite do it? Let him alone, and him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. It may be that the Lord will look on mine affliction, and that the Lord will requite me good for his cursing this day. And as David and his men went by the way, Shimei went along on the hill's side over against him, and cursed as he went, and threw stones at him, and cast dust. All right, turn over to chapter 19. Verse 16. So this is when David has returned. Verse 15 actually says, so the king returned and came to Jordan. So all the uprising / rebellion is over. David's returning victorious. And the king returned and came to Jordan. And Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king, to conduct the king over Jordan. And Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjamite, which was a Bahurim, hasted and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. And there were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him. And Ziba, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with them. And they went over Jordan before the king. And they went over a ferry boat to carry over the king's household into what he thought good. And Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king, and as he was come over Jordan, and said unto the king, let not my lord impute iniquity unto me. Neither do thou remember that thou, which thy servant did, perversely that day, that my lord the king went out of Jerusalem, that the king should take it to his heart. For thy servant doth know that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I am come the first this day of the house of Joseph to go down and meet my lord the king. So, verse 21 goes on though. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, shall not Shimei be put to death for this? So, I mean, he's sorry for interrupting, but I mean, he really wants this guy dead. I mean, he's mad. His mighty men, and I mean, they weren't doing this for money. They were loyal, and loyalty, I mean, that's a powerful thing. So, yeah, he hadn't forgotten. So shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? And David said, what have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah, that ye should this day be adversaries unto me? Shall there any man be put to death this day in Israel? For do not I know that I am this day king over Israel? Therefore the king said unto Shimei, thou shalt not die. And the king sware unto him. So, there's a bit of an attitude that I guess those who believe in old-fashioned ways are typically the best, and that's the attitude of nip it in the bud and don't respect your elders and things like that, and I think there's merit to that, especially on this world. Rudy Giuliani had a broken window theory of policy of policing, and whenever there was a neighborhood that had been a good neighborhood, and then things started happening like vandalism, broken rocks, or rocks and broken windows, then they would come down on it, and that worked really well. I mean, he cleaned up New York City, from what I hear. I've never been there, but there's a place for mercy too, right? And so grumpy people like me who are pretty unforgiving, need to remember that people need mercy, and I want mercy, right? So I try. Sometimes I just, I fail, and I mean, sometimes I know other people fail when they try, they forget, and that's why I once again bring up something like road rage, because that's where I've seen most Christians who are generally temperate people fail. One guy, I never saw him mad. He was a friend, he still is a friend. This was in college, and I never saw him get mad until I rode with him once, and the person was driving too slow. And there was no way to get around him, and it was a curvy road. And boy, I was like, he got really mad. And then the guy who was going slow went slower, right? Because now they're mad that he's mad. And so then he gets madder, and anyway, that's the only time I ever saw him mad, and I was like, wow. So anyway, it's all something we can we can try to remember to give, the phrase I hear right now is, to give grace. Now, I don't know. Grace was described to me as unmerited favor, but it's, do you deserve it or not is irrelevant. You get it. And so that is something we need to be, and it's interesting to see this mentioned in Ecclesiastes, and God likes, but once again, just to reemphasize the point, God likes mercy. So if you're in the right to come down like a ton of bricks on somebody, but you show them mercy, I think that pleases the Lord, because that shows some wisdom. And I get frustrated sometimes at my job because there's a lot of bureaucracy, and it's bureaucracy because of some of it's because of the size, but some of it's because of a desire for safety, which I'm beginning to really dislike safety, because safety gets in the way of progress. If you're always being safe, it's good to be quote unquote safe, but where do you draw the line? And but the point of the matter is sometimes I ask people to do something, and they don't say no, right? They're not very cooperative. And they're probably really busy, right? I don't know how busy they are. I'm not going to assume they're not busy. Most people tend to be busy. But it's easy to do that. It's easy to assume, they just don't want to do the work, because there are people like that. But I don't know that person well enough. And so I'm like, okay, you're busy. I'm like, I can go to your boss and get you to do this, or I can go to two bosses above you and have it come down, which is typically what happens, or we can just try to work on this. And it's very tempting to have the attitude of, well, they don't want to do it. Let's talk to their boss, or I'll talk to my boss, and she can talk to their boss, or something like that. And I don't like that. I don't like that because I don't think it shows. Because I don't like being treated that way, to be honest. And so I try to give grace to somebody else, and I try to work with them, and sometimes it's hard, and sometimes I write messages, and then I stop, and I'm like, let's rephrase this as a request, not a demand. I'm not their boss. I don't need to demand this. And so having an attitude of forgiveness in whatever we do in our life, at home, at work, wherever we go on the road, I think it's something that we can all use more of. Now, it doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean, if somebody murders somebody in your family, you invite them to live in your house, as has been done, because, that's nice, that's forgiving, but it's not smart. Murderers tend to murder. So, anyway, moving on. From Shimei. Verse 23 says, all this have I proved by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. That which is far off and exceeding deep, who can find it out? I applied mine heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. I'll stop right there. So one of the things that I noticed here is this is back to self. This is back to not God. We're talking about I now. I proved, which tested. I tested by wisdom is usually what proving means. You're testing something. I will be wise, but he says, I will be wise. It was far from me. Can we this is a rhetorical question. Can we be wise? The answer is obviously no, not really. Not without God. We can't be wise ourselves. We have to ask God. And so God gives it two ways, and he gives it, right? You can ask him. It says in James that you can ask him, or you can get it, and Proverbs says by studying his word. Either way, God's giving it to you. You don't get it yourself. You don't go out and read a bunch of books and gain a bunch of wisdom. You may gain knowledge. You may gain some understanding of the way the world works, but you haven't gained anything that can lead to life. Job 28:12-13 says, but where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? Man knoweth not the price thereof, neither is it found in the land of living. Man can't find wisdom. Job 11:7 says, canst thou by searching find out God? Canst thou find out the Almighty unto perfection? And so this kind of goes to the point that I know Kelly has made that, there's, I think it's a church for searchers or whatever. It's like, that's, we don't decide independently to go and find out the meaning of life. There are people who might, they might think that, although most of those people never find out the meaning of life, and they end up going to hell. But God gives us light, and if we respond to that light, he gives more light, and it just keeps going until you either get to a decision point of you either stop accepting the light and stop seeking it, stop responding to what God has given, or you reject it completely once you understand what it's leading you towards. Most people reject it completely just through indecision. I see lots of stuff happen like that. I don't like to not react to things. I tend to react immediately, which isn't very healthy either. But there are lots of times where not doing anything is the right answer. Sometimes even for Christians, it's the right answer. If God has put you in a situation that is not, you don't know which direction to go, it's not clear from the Bible, and he hasn't given you clarity in your prayers, sometimes you just need to stay the course. You keep doing whatever it is you're doing until God makes it clear. One of the most detrimental things I've seen is people that take something that happens in this life as a sign to then do something else. And the one I always think of is a gentleman from college who failed a calculus class. He was very proud of his knowledge, and I understand that. I was proud of my knowledge before I went to college. I learned I wasn't all that smart. He went to college and failed the calculus class when he was an A student before. And then he took it again, failed again, and then he decided he was going to be a preacher. Like, that was God telling him and then he quit that and dropped out of school. So there is a difference between, being still and knowing that he is God and not making decisions about the right stuff, the right things to do, because you're procrastinating. And actually, I just got convicted about something right now that I've been procrastinating on and I need to do something about. So, let's see here. So verse 25, he says, I applied mine heart to know and to search and seek out wisdom and the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. I don't know why you'd want to know the wickedness of folly. But he apparently, I mean, we know from the beginning of the book that that's what he did. Let's go on with verse 26. This is, always afraid to say anything to women, all right? Because, I have been taught my entire life, you don't tell a woman anything. I don't know, plug your ears, I guess. Because this says something about a woman, but it's a specific type of woman, I think. And it says, and I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands is bands. Whoso pleaseth God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. So I think this is the strange woman, the ungodly woman, the unrighteous woman. I don't think it applies to people in here, but it is something to note that Solomon in Proverbs and in Ecclesiastes has called out how women can be the downfall. Men always have pride in their strength, but we're pretty simple with our brains and unable to understand, the whole asking things without asking or hinting or whatever. It's like, guys just, we don't get that. And sometimes it's not that we're not trying. We just, we're trying to read the signs. And I saw this joke where this guy was out having a wonderful time with his he called her his mate, which I thought was interesting, probably his spouse, and although mate is fine, and they were talking about stuff, and they were so happy they had found each other and were married, and they're like, this is kind of what I thought this would be like, and then they do this game, and it's like, what kind of animal would you want to be? And so the woman says, oh, I would be a lion, and they go growl and do all this little stuff, and then she says to him, what kind of an animal would you be? So the guy's thinking let's see, I could be a rhinoceros, he's going through his head, doing all this stuff, and he says, oh, an eagle. I could be an eagle. That's strong and, free and all these things. And so he says, I'm going to be an eagle. And she says, you're going to be what? He says, an eagle. Like, what? Anyway, fast forward the joke. She's upset that he doesn't want to become a lion too, so he can be with her and they can be married. And so, does this have anything to do with the message? Not really. Why am I telling you the joke? I'm not sure, other than I found it funny. But the point of the matter is that guys are simple, women tend to be much more complicated. We can't understand them. They probably don't understand us because they're like, how do you even function? Because your brains are so simple. But there is a real danger from women, and we know from Samson, Delilah, and things like that. So let's wrap up. 27, 28, 29 wraps up the chapter. Behold, this have I found, said the preacher, counting one by one to find out the account, which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not. One man among 1,000 have I found, but a woman among all those have I not found. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. So this is kind of a mouthful. It's kind of like, what, But behold, this have I found, counting one by one to find out the account. So what are people really? Is there a wise man out there? and he hasn't found one. And then the second part, which is a little confusing, because it says, but a woman, which makes you think, well, but there's a woman, right? But that's not really what it means, because conjunctions in Hebrew have a little bit more flexibility than in English. So, but we would think that this is in rebuttal to the other thing. But it's more, you can read this more properly as, and a woman among those have I not found. He hasn't found a man or a woman that's wise. And then, well, let me go ahead and read Romans here. Turn to Romans 1. I'm going to read 21 through the end of the chapter, 32. All right, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations. And their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible man into an image made like to corruptible man, and to birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things. Wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause God gave them up to vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust toward another, men, which working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. I love the disobedience to parents part. Not that I was very obedient either, so I better watch out. That's who man is without God. And God, to some extent, lets them do that, right? People don't get judged. Lightning very rarely strikes them down. But, what you reap what you sow, and you will reap the whirlwind. You sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. Verse 29 says, lo, this only have I found. So this is the truth here. God hath made man upright. But they, being man, have sought out many inventions. There's lots of ways to heaven. You can be a Catholic, you can be a Mormon, even Muslims get to go to heaven. Everybody gets to go to heaven. Well, sorry, it's not what the Bible says. I mean, we're not trying to say that as a, hey, we're better than you. We're trying to say that as, hey, this is what the Bible says. We believe the Bible. We recommend you do as well. We don't want anybody to go to hell. But it's also a blessing, because as I've mentioned, and I'll probably keep mentioning it, because the more I recognize it, the more I see it, and that is the blessings that God has shown to the world through the Bible and through Christianity, up to us having freedom of religion and freedom of speech and assembly and the right to keep and bear arms. I mean, these are all things that are blessings, and America is, whether we like it or not, has been the policeman of the world in one way or another. And then the rest of the world can just, they don't have to worry about stuff because we're taking care of it. But, then they're very unhappy when we do things. So God hath made man upright. They have sought out many inventions. I guess the last thing I want to say, my kids will probably get sick of hearing this, is feelings and safety, and the desire for safety, I think is really harming this world. We have to have some adventurous spirit. We have to have, we'll get our feelings hurt. We have to learn to carry on through that and not have it be debilitating. When I grew up, it was sticks and stones may break your bones. Words may never hurt you. But, you're like, well, yeah, it hurts me. It hurts my feelings. Yeah, but we can hurt your feelings legally. We're not allowed to physically hurt you. So, but as far as feelings go, in the church, it's important to, manage the feelings. If we have a conflict or anything else, Pastor talked about unity a whole bunch. Had an example, just recently where Daniel was teaching and he said something I didn't quite agree with, and I'm not a very good poker face, so he was able to tell. And so I was probably not gonna, I don't know if I was gonna say anything to him or not, but I was hanging out anyway. And he came over and he talked to me. And then we clarified it, and we're on the same page, and I think we agree with each other. But it's something that, I could have been like, oh, no, what an idiot. And he would be like, how dare he react that way? It's really easy, and he would be right for I need to hold back more and not trying to change for 50 years now. Hasn't worked very well. But handling things the proper way is really important. And if somebody hurts your feelings or you disagree with him, you either need to get over it and forbear, or you need to reconcile, that you need to man up and talk to that person. I've seen many things, even some in this church, where people get upset about something and then they passive-aggressively react. It's like, well, I don't like this person, so I'm not coming to when they preach, because I don't like them. It's not a healthy thing for our church. And I'm never going to agree 100% with what Daniel says. I'm not going to agree with 100% with what Kelly says, or Justin, or Pastor Rue. It's just not possible. So we have to get past that. We have to say, if we don't agree, just move on with your life unless it's something that's really critical. It's as our church, we've had a lot of people here, and this is a big crowd for Sunday school. But as we get, we seem to be growing, which is awesome. But as you grow, it's easier for misunderstandings to happen, and it's easier for feelings to get hurt. It's Justin came in a couple of years ago, and he was like very tentative, he was feeling out like, hey, can I help work on this? And I'm like, dude, do whatever. Like, you're not stepping on my toes. But he was very careful about it. He was very, he was making sure. And Pastor Hensley would always come to like Kelly or myself and say, hey, what do you think about doing this? And we're like, you're the pastor, do it. He's like, well, I know technically I have the authority, but in the interest of unity, he would talk to us. And it was pretty much always a rubber stamp. Very rarely was there any sort of feedback. So other than, you're in charge, that's fine with us. But it's just something that we need to keep in mind, and it's kind of been weighing on my heart. And so anyway, with that, I will wrap up and pray to dismiss. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for bringing us here, Lord. We thank you for everybody, all of our preachers and teachers, everybody who's able to help fill the pulpit and preach your word or teach your word. We just, thank you for the effort that people spend on this stuff. And I just pray that you would continue to bless everybody that is trying to do your will and serve you in this church. I just pray for the people who don't have an active part in the ministry. If they want one, I just pray that you'd find a spot for them and help them to just slot in nicely, Lord. Your burden is light, and you don't ask a lot of us, and so we love you and we want to serve you. I pray you would bless the services today, the song service and the preaching and teaching, and just be with us, Lord, and help us to remember that we're not living our lives for ourselves, but